I think there's a changing of the guard in college football. Obviously, we saw Georgia fall to Ole Miss, and now we're seeing Alabama fall to, hang on, the notes just came in.
Okay.
Indiana losing
Oh,
to
wow.
Indiana. I mean, if I would have told you that 3 years ago, you would have asked me what planet I'm on. You would have asked me what
What's this
dimension.
for?
You'd have said, "Is this a sequel of the multiverse of that Spider-Man awesome animated film?" Like that's what you would ask me. It's
Yeah.
absolutely insane. But you look at what Curt Cignetti has done, and if you want to look at actually what Curt Cignetti is, one, he reminds me of Bob Parr from The Incredibles. I don't know if you've seen
Yeah, he
that
does.
comparison. Perfect fit.
Oh, I thought you were gonna ask
Perfect
if I've
fit.
seen that movie.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course I've
Duh,
seen that movie.
duh. Yeah. But here's my biggest thing here. Obviously, what Curt Cignetti has done has been absolutely impressive. But let me ask you this: are we at a changing of the guard? And here's why I asked that. Teams like Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, they're not in the Final Four. We got teams that made the college football playoffs that are in the national championship game. We are guaranteed a national champion for the first time in 24 years. Miami won it in 01. Ole Miss claimed one in 1962. Indiana and Oregon have never won a national championship. Those are the four teams left. We are on the cusp of a brand new national champion, at least one in the last, in your lifetime. What is your thoughts here? Is this the changing of an old guard? Are we getting the new stuff replaced? And is it because NIL, they're mastering it? Is that what it is? It's the new masters of the NIL that are the top teams in the league.
Yeah, that's kind of how I'm viewing it. It's literally you can see the NIL, kind of landscape or whatever you want to call it, era taking full effect in real time. Like the way that this has panned out is exactly, and the fact that there's no Clemson in here too just makes perfect sense. I mean, it is I know we're talking about how like FCS teams are getting farmed and, even teams like that are losing their coach, like Iowa State, like just ridiculous number of guys that are in the portal and whatnot. But what it comes down to for me is this is the final four teams. And, you're exactly right. Had you said this 3-4 years ago, I guess Ole Miss and Miami probably in that conversation, but I don't feel like even Oregon was on this level, a couple of years ago. They completely turned this program around in the last 3-4 years. So I 100% think this is like a roster building kind of game now, as much as it is a football game, and these teams have done a phenomenal job of getting that done. Indiana and what Curt Cignetti has, I can't even put words to that. That's nobody thought that was going to happen, but Cignetti, I'm sure, just never had a doubt. Google me,
Yeah, Google him. And the turnover that Indiana has done over the last 2 years has been so impressive. Cignetti over the last 2 years at Indiana. I mean, this is a team that was seen as one of the bottom feeders in the league beforehand. 25-2 in the last 2 years, 2 playoff appearances, the first ever Big Ten title, only 2 10-win seasons in school history over the last 2 years. And of course, wins over Ohio State, wins over Oregon, wins over Alabama. You now have a Heisman Trophy winner in Fernando Mendoza, trying to say his name at the exact same time, first and last name. Check that out. Happy Friday, everybody. I think we are at the most exciting point for Indiana sports in the history of their collegiate program. And what's crazy is that like they've had one of the most blue-blooded basketball program, but right now where we are sitting, how important football is when it comes to revenue and stuff, now that they're finally shining. We entered 2026 with Indiana as the number one football team and Michigan as the number one basketball team. Like, again, what kind of universe are we in right now?
Very, very weird universe, but I actually kind of like it. I kind of dig it. There's something to be said about, a little bit of parody in there as well. And some of these storylines are just incredible. So yeah, this Indiana team and the fact that they dismantled this Alabama team. This was not like a narrow win. People were saying online, Fernando Mendoza had the entire second half to plan out his post-game speeches. I mean, there was never a thought really that
Kalen DeBoer kicked a field goal when down 24-0 in the college football playoff game just to make sure he didn't get blanked. Like, are you kidding me?
0. It's like the opposite of Kirby Smart, actually, as far as making sensible plays. What those two were doing. There was a few questionable calls in there, but yeah, this was incredible from Indiana. I think it really showed, like, obviously we talked about like the first round woes, and we can talk about that more in just a second, but like Indiana is like on another plane and the way that they're coached and the way that the roster's been constructed, it's something about them. They just feel like untouchable. They're so good.
Yeah, if you talk about Heisman woes, right? A lot of people like to say, "Hey, as soon as you're
True.
announced the Heisman Trophy winner, you usually have a bad game." That was not the case for Mendoza. He only had 192 yards passing. He didn't need to throw the football. They won by 35 points. He threw 3 touchdowns. I mean, it was super impressive. And the fact that I completely forgot about this, to be honest, completely forgot that his little brother was the backup quarterback. So, like, when they made the whole story for Mendoza, like, hilarious. I thought that was great. Completely forgot about that whole process. All of the talks that we have about Indiana, Cignetti, Mendoza, one thing that is really that always gets forgotten about is this rush defense for Indiana, the run stopping defense of Indiana. They only allowed, now Alabama hasn't been a good running team all year.
That's the thing I was going to bring
process, but Indiana only allowed 23 yards of rushing. Is this the worst loss you have ever seen for Alabama? When you're looking at the logos and you're like looking at this, I don't think I've ever seen Alabama lose this bad before.
It's up there. And granted, remember, my, brain doesn't go that far back as far as what I've seen live. It's still relatively new, so keep that in mind. But it has been a long time since I've seen Alabama get beat like this and get beat like this to, a name like this. Not that Indiana deserves like any sort of like hate, because they're incredible this year and last year. And I think Curt Cignetti's like record I saw was he's like got like 2 losses or whatever. It's just like some insane win percentage. It was incredible. But everybody knows the Indiana name. Prior to Curt Cignetti, they had won like 38% of their games all time.
I think it's the second lowest in FBS history.
Yeah, they just aren't a good team. So yeah, I think you can take that into consideration. This is one of the worst losses that Alabama's ever sustained for sure.
I'm gonna give you 2 numbers here. We've been talking about winning records over and over again. I'm gonna give you 2 records here: 1-7 and 1-9. 1-7 are all the teams in the last 2 years since the college football playoffs that have received a bye, made it to the semifinals. There's one team that's done that. That's Indiana. Again, breaking the records. Only 8 bye teams. You have 4 in each year. Only one team has made it the next round. This bye week thing is crazy. Having 25 days off and then trying to play trying to play football. You might as well play basketball because you've been off for so long.
Yeah.
Momentum is such an important thing. And we're learning that right here. You might see teams that win and be the top 4 teams in the country boycott the first round bye after how it's been. And then on the flip side, 1-9. 1-9 is the number I want to tell you next.
Okay.
Indiana, again, the only one of this category. Out of the 10 conference championship winners in the last 2 years, only Indiana, who won the Big Ten championship game, has made it to the semifinals. So here's my question here. Does the college football playoffs need to be changed with the fact of obviously having a bye week, getting rid of it, just going to a full 16-team format maybe where you play all in the same weekend? No byes anymore. And then also, do championships still matter when it comes to conference championships games? Do they still matter?
That's really
throw it at you on a Friday
morning. That's a tough question. I think the format has to change, but I don't think it has to change like drastically for some change to be made. I do think that the format probably needs to change drastically just for unrelated reasons to the question you just asked me. But if you were to basically get rid of the week where like they're not playing, bump everything up a week and play, the higher seed at home, like Dan Lanning was talking about, like they should have played at Texas Tech, that probably is going to help those teams that have a bye more than playing at some neutral site. I think that would be a good step in the right direction. And then as far as conference championships go, I think to really change that front, you're going to have to change the way that the entire system works. You can make it more about like one idea that I had was, basically letting in 8 teams, and it's only the teams from the Power 4 that made a conference championship game. And it's just like you can get really in there into the weeds as far as what the format for a playoff format could look like. But as of right now, I wouldn't say conference championships don't matter. Obviously, very important to the legacy of a program, but it does feel like, winning that game versus losing that game isn't really equated into this, but playing in that game is an extra game of wear and tear, right? It's an extra game of of not knowing or of not preparing and resting up for another, first playoff game. So there is something to be said about that. But either way, I think the most important piece of all of this is just that is a great indicator of just how incredible Indiana is, because they have defied all the odds. I mean, we were talking about first round bye, and if that meant automatically you were going to lose after Ohio State lost. And I was like, I don't know, man. Indiana, I have a feeling that this game is like going to put a real foot in the mud as far as that stat. It's not going to be and it's going to be Indiana, and it's Indiana versus everybody else losing in the second round if you had a bye. So, man, it's been incredible to watch what they've done. And this, I think these two stats that you mentioned, the Big Ten championship and the first round bye, really highlight that.
Alabama obviously lost in the SEC championship game, had 3 losses heading into this one. Was this a sign? Obviously, the Oklahoma game, they make a comeback here. You could make the argument that Oklahoma didn't belong in the college football playoffs either. But is this a sign that you need to make sure, no matter what happens, 3 lost teams should not make the college football playoffs? Did Alabama truly belong here?
I mean, this is the conversation we just had yesterday, right? Like, did, Miami dominating, Ohio State prove that they belonged in here and whatever? And like, it's a valid conversation. I'm not saying that that's not a good question, but I try to separate what happens in the playoffs from whether or not they deserve to get in as much as I can. Because like I said yesterday, once you're in, you just win, play for the next game. You just have to win the game in front of you, and you have accomplished like what you need to do. It's not related to what's behind you at all. But like this one, it just felt to me like Alabama didn't deserve to be there at all. And it's not necessarily tied to the Indiana game. I'm not going to like say that this is a reason, but there were certainly indicators, like the run game against Georgia, -3 yards. What happened against Indiana? What did you say, 27? Like, are we saying that there's not a pattern here? Obviously, Indiana, very good run stopping defense too, and Georgia relatively solid there as well. I just like, I don't know, man. I'm not saying this was the reason Alabama did not deserve to be in, but I am going to say I was absolutely in the camp that they should not have got in. I think you could make the argument 3 lost teams, unless there is, man, I don't know how you approach that with conference championships, to be honest, because unless there's like not enough 2 lost teams, like should we even have 3 lost teams in here? I would say no. I think there's enough 2 lost teams to get that done.
Well, you got to remember who they replaced, right? The teams that they were snubbed over, Notre Dame and BYU. Those were not 3 lost teams. Now, Notre Dame, obviously, there's one thing conversation about because they didn't play in a conference championship game. All goes back to the fact of this conference championships don't matter. But then BYU, they only lost to a team like Texas Tech, although I don't think that resume is really helping too much after what we saw yesterday from Texas Tech.
Yeah, we'll talk about Texas Tech in a second. But yeah, that's the challenging part here is then who would you technically put in by the criteria that I had just laid out? Would it be BYU? Because they also lost their conference championship game. They didn't have as many losses on the year, which is a better look, but it's a tricky problem. I am not going to completely hate on the committee because I don't have the right answer. Sometimes like if I'm really rough on the refs, it's because I have the right answer. It's like clear as day that wasn't the right call. Like that is okay for me to be upset. For the committee, like I can be upset with them, but I also at the same time have to realize I don't know what the right play is here. Like this is a really tricky situation, and we might talk more about FCS playoffs and kind of how they do it in the coming days. And that, like, I love that format. And maybe they look towards something like that, but it's really at the end of the day all about money anyway. So I guess I don't even know why we're talking about change that could be made.